Good morning, good afternoon, from wherever you are. We are gradually admitting people into this webinar, so bear with us one moment.
Well, let's just get started as people are still coming in. So it's welcome everybody to this webinar on transforming WASH, focusing on the insights and opportunities of technical assistance. And my name is Loes Nijkamp. I work for Act for All, and I'll be guiding you through the session of today. So before we get started, I just want to mention some housekeeping rules. So we're asking everybody to remain muted during the session and keep your cameras off as well, unless we are asking you to unmute yourself and say something. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat throughout the session. We will have a Q&A session at the end where we will come back to your questions. And also good for you to know is that this session is being recorded, and we will also share the recording and also the slides with everybody after the session. So I think for now, let's just get started on this webinar. And actually, before we do that, I just wanted to let you know that we'll be working with Mentimeter today as well. So I'll post I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a tool where we can gather some information. We will have some questions for you. We'd like to know who's in the room and your insights, etc. So it'd be great if you can already go to the website and put in the code, and then from there we can easily get started on that aspect as well. But let me guide you through the agenda of today, which is we'll start with a bit of an introduction on Act for All as well as an organization. Then we'll dive into the relevance and the strengths of technical assistance. We'll share more about Act for All's position in this and what our strategy is for technical assistance. We will share some key insights and learning. We've also asked some guest speakers who I will introduce in a second to also share some insights and learning from TA programs that we have implemented. And we'll even zoom in a little bit further on an enterprise W2 who has been through several TA programs, and we'll share more about their experience. Then we'll move on, we'll look a bit into the future, and we'll see what's next, and we'll close up with Q&A. And with that, I'd like to introduce who's going to be speaking today. So the main speaker of today will be Annemarie. She works for Act for All as the TA manager. Well, myself, I'm a program manager at Act for All. And then we'll also have always our colleague as the Impact Finance manager. And outside of our own organization, we'll also have some guest speakers. So we'll have Melanie from Roots of Impact, where she was the implementing partner specifically for the ILS for WASH program, and she's the technical assistance portfolio manager. And then you also see two people, Joel and Brian, who are going to speak on behalf of W2 and their experiences. So as we have introduced ourselves, we're also very curious who else is in the room and who's joining us today in this webinar. And for that, as I mentioned, we'll be using the tool of Mentimeter. So you can find the details in the chat, but I'll also now switch the screen to the Mentimeter, where you should be able to see a big QR code. So I'll just give you a second in case you wanted to scan it. But again, it's easiest to go to menti.com and use the code that's on the top. And I see that already 16, 18 of you are in there. So we'll just quickly move directly to the first question while people are still joining in. So we would like to know, where are you based? So are you based, we'll just keep it to the continents, Asia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, or Oceania? So I see while people are still answering the questions, I see a big audience from Europe there, also Africa, Asia a little. Nice. Well, it seems to be keeping a bit of the same proportions. So that's very nice to see. Let me just move on to the next question to learn even more about who's in the room. And that is, what is the type of organization that you are that you belong to, that you are representing here? So we have, are you an impact enterprise? Are you maybe more into the investment sector, either financial institution, impact investor, or are you working in TA yourself, providing the TA? Are you an NGO, or maybe some other categories that we have not mentioned here? Well, I think it's very clear. Mainly a lot of TA providers and consultancy firms. It's nice to see also quite some impact enterprises and some NGOs. I'll be curious to learn who the other category is, so feel free to also put that in the chat so we know who else actually we're reaching with this webinar. Yeah, super nice to see, and we'll just move on to the next question. I see most of you have answered. So yeah, what kind of sector do you focus on? Is it drinking water? Is it sanitation? Is it hygiene, water resource management? I believe you should be able to tick multiple boxes, but let's see how the tech is treating us. So very clearly, drinking water is there at the top, quite some sanitation. Oh, it's really nice to see that so many of you are also working in the water resource management. So the sector so far we have been dipping into, we have not done so much in so far. So it's nice to see that you are still represented here. Okay, nice. And just move a little bit more to the topic of today, which is also, we'd like to see you put in some keywords on what do you see as technical assistance? What are the things that you are the words that you're thinking of when we're talking about technical assistance? That's nice. Grant enabler, capacity strengthening, and so the bigger the words are, of course, the more people are mentioning this word. So it's nice to see that there are a few words really popping up. Support, capacity building. Yeah, I think a very important word there. Necessary. Yes. Great to see all of these words will be coming up in the next, basically in the coming session. Indeed, it's very nice. It's an enabler, right? It's the support, capacity building. Like also the term investment readiness. But actually, it's also so nice to see that so many words are popping up. That everybody has such a. It's actually also a very broad term, right? So it's we'll dive into that a little bit more. And then I'll just move on to the next, to the last question for now, which is on, we want to know if you have any experience receiving or providing TA in the past. Looking at, you know, the amount of TA providers we have in the room, I assume there's going to be a lot of yeses. But let's see, there's just a few who are no, so they'll learn. Well, this session will be even more useful, I guess, for them, because it will give you new insights. But it's great to see that so many of you are familiar with TA. So I guess we'll be building on that also through the rest of this session. And we also hope to learn a little bit more about your insights and throughout your experience. And with that, I'm going to close the Mentimeter for now, but please keep it open as a tab because we will have a few additional questions later in the session, so then we'll easily get back to that. But for now, we'll go back to the presentation, and I will hand it over to Annemarie, who will be speaking more on the content.
Yes.
That's actually going to be me still. I'm so sorry. We first have to introduce, of course, our organization for the ones who are not familiar with it yet. So Aqua for All is an international foundation, and we work on mobilizing private capital and strengthening entrepreneurs in the water sanitation sector, especially in low and middle income countries. And we do this through a dual approach, and through that we're trying to bridge the service and the financial gap in WASH. So we're really trying to catalyze private capital, get it into the sector. Of course, with the overall mission to accelerate universal access to water and sanitation services that are affordable, inclusive, and sustainable. And we focus mainly on regions in Africa and Asia. And just a little bit more about our approach. We will dive into this way more throughout the session. But we have different tools that we're using for this. So you can see in the dark blue, we have 3 different tools: the de-risking, the smart grants, and the technical assistance that we deploy in different ways. So the de-risking we really use when we are working with the fund managers and the financial institutions to enable them to provide more capital into the sector. Smart grants, we work with the enterprises more directly, but also through our work with the financial institutions and the fund managers. We are trying to that funding that they're making available will also get to the enterprises, enable to scale their business, and of course reach people with access to water and sanitation. And you can see nice in the middle, we have the one of the tools is also the technical assistance, which you can see we're using for all 3 parties that we're working with. So I'll leave it for now, and we'll dive into this a little bit more when we're speaking on technical assistance. And now I am handing over to Annemarie to dive more into TA as an instrument.
Thank you so much, Luz. Welcome everybody, also people that are still joining in. So the aim of today's webinar is to discuss TA, specifically its additionality and best practices in the sector of water, sanitation, and hygiene. Specifically, how can we maximize its value to contribute to unlock capital from investors and help businesses or other implementers to create sustainable access to water and sanitation services? And also, how can we be complementary in deploying TA? So we really look forward also to have your inputs during the different polls and the Q&A session. Before hearing different perspectives and the discussion later on, I'd first like to put the topic into context, including some definitions, because as we saw in the word cloud, there are so many different interpretations of TA, and some examples to illustrate the breadth of approaches and focus. Next slide. So TA is often seen as a core instrument prior to or alongside investment, but also very much beyond that, as you can see. So different funders, including DFIs like Norfunds, but also impact investment firms and asset managers, for example, Incofin and Danone Communities, but also bilateral agencies like AFD, funds facilitate or provide TA services in some way or another. And I believe some of them are also with us today, so it would be great to have your inputs reflected in the polls. And according to the GIN, the leading industry body for impact investing, TA overall is an effective mechanism to increase financial resilience and inclusive economic development. So some figures. The same GIN states that already in 2015, 73% of impact investors indicated to provide TA to their investees. Maybe Lucy, can you do that? Yeah, thanks. And according to the database of Convergence, which is the global network for blended finance, 26% of their 270 recorded blended finance transactions included a TA component. Let me just switch to the next. Yes, we're a bit behind. And then also on the level of development cooperation, rough estimates by the OECD include that between 15 and 30% of ODA is historically spent on technical operation and assistance. So this is just to put the significance of TA as an instrument into a broader context. But as you can see, from the variety of institutions deploying TA in capacity building, one can also imagine the multitude of different understandings of it and on how it's operationalized. So first, some definitions, really examples, so not an exclusive list. What is TA? Although most of us know more or less, it's interesting to see the differences, ranging from the World Bank seeing it as a key instrument for improving policies, but also strengthening skills and implementation capacity, to an author from Dalberg, interestingly, describing it as a type of blended finance. The one common feature in all is that it's non-financial assistance, as is also mentioned in the second bullet. Next slide, yes. So to illustrate the breadth of TA deployment, overall, TA can be targeted for a variety of purposes and stakeholders. Broadly speaking, one can think of TA at institutional level. So for example, for enterprises or financial institutions. Another approach is designing TA at ecosystem level, like for example, cohort-based accelerators, often also including a train-the-trainer component, like our partner Roots of Impact does. And there's TA for infrastructure development, often applied in the project preparation phase. And then there's also different forms of TA and technical support from government to government applied, for example, in the wash sector to utilities. Looking also at Loes, how we do in terms of time. Maybe some examples, I'll go very quickly, just to illustrate the diversity. There's Pitch, who facilitates TA from project preparation to feasibility studies and operation. Next slide is Norfund, the Norwegian Investment Fund for Developing Countries. They have a business support facility that targets their investees, the local community, and the sector at large. And as you can see on the next slide, this approach is very similar to the TA facility of FMO, the Dutch Development Bank. And then on the next slide, you can see SEWAS is another key party that focuses on ecosystem and pipeline development, amongst others, by capacity building. Then there's a TA facility of the Water Access Acceleration Fund, or in short WAF, managed by Incofin. And then just a final example is the funnel approach of the Social Finance Academy of Roots of Impact, focusing on different capacity building programs that lead to impact-linked finance transactions. So now moving on to the strategy of Accra for All in relation to TA. We'd like to share that and also hear your views on it. So at Accra for All, we believe that TA enhances the quality, scalability, and sustainability of water and sanitation enterprises, making it a vital component of funding and finance approaches that are targeted at creating impact. So speaking of definitions, we define TA as resources that are used for either capacity development, knowledge transfer, or consulting specific needs. And then within TA, as one of our key instruments, as also mentioned and shown earlier by Loes, we roughly distinguish between, on the one hand, more long-term oriented capacity building, which is focused on skill development and knowledge transfer. And on the other hand, short-term consulting based on specific needs. So, but all within the overarching term of TA. And like Loes also mentioned, we mostly facilitate TA for fund managers, for financial institutions like local banks and MFIs, and of course, enterprises. Next slide. So the overall goal of TA that we facilitate is to create long-term capabilities of partners, build alignments, and develop effective approaches in order to scale businesses, de-risk investments, and enhance impact in the WASH sector. And important to mention also is that TA is always complementary to our other funding instruments in such a way that it aligns with our dual approach to bridge both the service and financing gap in water and sanitation. Yes, next slide. Overall, we distinguish between 3 types of deploying TA. One is investment targeted support, so either pre or post investments, one-to-one or cohort-based. This can be directly to financial institutions and enterprises, or for example, indirectly through funds, for example, the WAF funds. And the second is financial product development and investment structuring tailored to the water and sanitation sectors, including nexus sectors. And then third is broadly market intelligence and ecosystem developments, where we focus on things like country assessments, research, knowledge briefs, and webinars. So next slide. We have identified 7 overarching categories of TA. I won't address them in detail, but it basically captures everything from business growth support, like business model refining, to key processes of operations, to finance, and from impact management and ESG to markets, like marketing strategies, customer engagement strategies, to, of course, also water and sanitation knowledge, which bridges sometimes well with cross-cutting themes like gender responsiveness and climate resilience. Next slide. The way we work overall is that we outsource TA, especially in cases of intensive individual TA, and in areas outside of our core expertise. But in cases where we have deep expertise, we also provide TA in-house, but mostly in the form of group-based one-off webinars or short trainings, or when it's really flexible during an individual TA project. So zooming in on 2 specific TA themes, I'd like to give some short background of one of our TA programs, namely the TA trajectory of our impact-linked finance for WASH program, ILF for WASH in short. Melanie from Roots of Impact will later also address this, and we have Joelle and Brian from RE2 with us today, who will share their experience. Within ILF for WASH, we basically have 3 types of TA, with 2 of them targeted at enterprises and 1 targeted at TA providers. And what is in common is that all programs focus on impact measurement and management, so IMM, and investment readiness, with the goal to prepare for impact-linked finance transactions. And the bootcamp is the most advanced pre-funding type of TA. Next slide. Interesting to see is that from all 14 enterprises that participated in the bootcamps, 4 have already been selected for social impact incentives, which is a kind of impact-linked finance transaction. Yes, then the next part, and bear with me a bit more, we will also have the more interactive part, but I'd like to now share some key insights and learnings from different types of TA interventions. And we really look forward to also hear yours. For this part, I will also invite 2 other people. But overall, in the next slide, you can see that we have distilled 4 overall key pillars for successful TA delivery. Also, thanks to the very useful inputs provided during a closed TA event that we had with Incofin and Norfund, where we invited several WASH funders. Next slide. No, this is good actually. So the first is relevance and responsiveness. It's important to adapt TA flexibly to the specific environment, needs, and capacities of the recipients, and to really have back and forth dialogue, also to go beyond stated needs. The second is ownership and commitment, where it's important to emphasize the importance of gaining that commitment from recipients by ensuring their buy-in, whether financial or in kind, So to ensure basically that TA is not only accepted, but that the outputs are also valued and effectively used afterwards. Third is sustainability and institutionalization. So really stressing the importance of designing outputs in such a way that they can be integrated into existing processes, systems, and also the organizational culture of the recipient. And to prioritize principles and knowledge transfer over rigid templates or reporting formats. And last but not least, catalytic ecosystem impacts. We believe it's crucial to avoid duplication by reusing outputs and in insights, and to really strengthen the broader ecosystem by also enabling others to build on existing work. So I'll pause here, and I'd like to invite our colleague Owais to zoom in on some learnings and insights of TA for financial institutions and asset managers. Owais.
Thanks, Anna-Marie. Yeah, and nice to be here today. So as a part of the work that Anna-Marie's already spoken about in our impact finance practice, we have a goal to mobilize more capital towards water and sanitation sector. And we use blended finance as a tool to absorb higher risk and unlock this additional capital, which includes first loss equity or first loss shared portfolio guarantees. We also use results-based financing. And as importantly, we utilize technical assistance as an instrument to enable this mobilization of capital. I'm going to take you through some of the key features and learnings from our experiences with technical assistance. So when working with funds, and what we've seen usually is reducing risk perception by improving the access to information can be very key in increasing mobilization of capital. Information is often key when assessing investments, and I think information can be built in through technical assistance support. So for example, when we work with Evenpower, a fund manager that invests in impact infrastructure for water and sanitation, we supported Evenpower with a catalytic first loss capital to reduce risk, but additionally also supported them with pre-investment technical assistance on a deal-on-deal basis. So the technical assistance was supported or enabled Evenpower in creating a conceptual project design when they were assessing an investment, which reduced investment risk significantly in a manner to almost bridge what investor needs are and what the investees are presently capable of creating. So they created a project design that helped to standardize OPEX, CAPEX, sales volumes, residual volumes that could value risk and reward, which was missing in the conceptual project design altogether. So you can see how technical assistance can reduce investor risks by improving access to information, but also standardizing project investment designs. With another asset manager, Oiko Credit, where we had a partnership, we worked on two levels. One was on enabling the asset management team or the investment team on the water and sanitation value chain, as well as their underlying investees. Supporting the asset manager in this way was very key to institutionalize their approach to water and sanitation being a new investment theme. The investment teams received context-driven training and capacity that made them capable of providing necessary market intelligence to their investees. And through this, you could see that Oiko Credit has currently developed a 6.5 million portfolio in water and sanitation in euros. And you see how TA builds institutional and investee capacity, so financiers can design tailored water and sanitation products as well to scale these portfolios. And then finally, when you're working with financial institutions and banks, so for example, with like the National Bank, the technical assistance has help understand the demand for water and sanitation financing. So using the information through technical assistance support, they have developed tailored products. They've designed tailored products, building on their capacity within the institutions to understand the technical aspects of the businesses and find appropriate means to finance these businesses, but then also to market the loan products that towards these specific businesses. And then lastly, I think what's important is along the chain of success, it's equally important to assess results so that you can replicate and scale these solutions. So our technical assistance has provided the banks with opportunities to create partnerships within the sector, for instance, with guarantee providers or water-related associations, with National Bank of Kenya, where we provided technical assistance for over 3 years. Currently, they've raised 8 million euros until date for water and sanitation, and their Margi Connect product has benefited about 600,000 users directly or indirectly. And I think these are some of the key learnings that we've experienced through our technical assistance support, working with funds, with asset managers, and with banks. I think at this point I'm going to pass it on to Melanie.
Yeah, well, indeed, very smooth. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say, if you have any questions for Owais or comments, feel free to use the chat. And indeed, over now to Melanie from Roots of Impact, focus on TA for stronger ecosystems for impact-linked finance, or ILF in short.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. I'm Melanie. I'm the TA Portfolio Manager at Roots of Impact, and I'm responsible for all the TA programs under the Social Finance Academy, which is the impact intelligence and educational arm of Roots of Impact. Our mission is basically to equip impact enterprises to access ILF through targeted TA support, and we definitely gain a lot of lessons learned over the last couple of years, and super excited to share these insights with you. The first lessons learned that we've gathered is basically our realization that it's a lot more impactful by changing one of our TA deliverable outputs from merely producing an impact report to developing a basic operational impact measurement system. Enterprises can now apply the impact measurement tools in real settings, producing data that supports ILF payment triggers in the transactions later. This shift basically ensures that by the time enterprises reach ILF, they would have functioning impact measurement systems, as well as outcome data that are ready for verification and payment linkage. And the second lessons learned is improving our selection criteria, focusing not only on commercial viability, but also organizational impact measurement readiness. For example, ensuring that impact enterprises have dedicated impact measurement staff and not just the founders leading the effort, as well as prioritizing enterprises that use impact measurement data for decision making and not only reporting. This basically results in a stronger pipeline quality and smoother ILF transaction preparation as well. And what worked really well, and we will be continue doing this, is basically working through the local service providers, because this creates a win-win dynamic. The benefit is that service providers become qualified multipliers, strengthening their own institutional capacity, and impact enterprises can receive higher quality contextualized support as well indirectly through us. And a local ILF readiness ecosystem is therefore formed, making it sustainable beyond the donor funding cycles. And finally, we've also learned the power of sustained multi-cohort programs, as seen in Bangladesh, that drive deeper and long-term ecosystem outcomes. Why this works is that each cohort, we basically reach 2 different organizational levels. We usually start with training the founders at first, and then the mid-level staff, and eventually it reaches even the junior team members. So knowledge stays within the ecosystem. As trained staff, they move across different organizations within the same landscape. And this basically helps to ensure that institutional capacity compounds over time and reinforce the ILF readiness across the market. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Over to you, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing these. It's really useful and well-captured insights and learning. So thanks for that. Now we'd like to pause a bit and also focus on the perspectives and insights from the audience that we have today. I see that we are with hundreds, so a lot of rich knowledge and insights, I expect. So we'd like to ask you to also think about what key insights and lessons you have about TA. For example, what are key criteria to effectively and efficiently provide TA, and what is needed to maximize the value of TA for both funders and recipients? So I think Luz in the meantime has prepared Mentimeter again. it would be great if you can think of insights that you want to share on receiving or providing TA. Can be short words or sentences. We see the first coming in. Loes, I'll hand over to you again for this part.
Yeah, so we'll see indeed all your insights coming in that are either, you know, it would be nice to reinforce what you maybe already heard, or what new things you are would like to share. So I think everybody can see them popping up on the screen as well, but it's nice to see indeed the co-designing element coming up again. Alignment on expectations, indeed, that there's clear impact of the support. I see actually three that are rather kind of similar, really important to listen, right? To align and to co-design. I think the needs indeed are very important. So I'll just let everybody think a little more and put their thoughts into the Mentimeter.
And feel free also to use the chat to explain your comment or to say who you are. Maybe for later on in the discussion, we can refer back to that.
Yeah. So indeed, again, the collaborative approach is really coming up, and it's interesting to see also that TA can be too restrictive on procurement and driving costs up. Yeah, I think we have a similar experience in where TA needs to have some flexibility component, right? So we are able to grow basically with the business as need, or the organization's need. Well, it's very nice to see all these insights coming in, and I hope also that we can stimulate some. Feel free indeed to also use the chat and share some, or elaborate, or maybe we can take some time in the Q&A also afterwards to dive a little bit deeper into what you're saying. But I see a bit of a pattern on the needs and the collaboration that is important, but
co-creation
indeed, that's necessary. Buy-in and alignment, I think, are key topics that are coming up. So hopefully we can have some more discussion either at the end of this session, or maybe actually we'll organize another session as well, where we can dive so much deeper into this key insights and sharing, because I think most of you have experience with the TA, either receiving or providing it. So it'd be super interesting to dive a little bit further into this. But I think for now, time-wise, I think it's best that we move on to our next topic, actually, where we have an enterprise who is really willing to share their experience that they've had so far with the TA that they've offered. So I think it would be nice to dive a little bit deeper into their experience.
Yes.
Feel free to continue writing some stuff in the Mentimeter if you have them. We will definitely go through them all as well. But for now, I'm going to hand back over to Anne-Marie to introduce our next speakers.
Yes, thanks, Loes. Yes, we are very happy that Brian Adanye and Joel Mwando from RE2 are with us today to share their experiences with 2 TA programs of the ILF for WASH program that I mentioned. Can you show the next slide, please? That I showed earlier. Namely, as you can see on the slides, foundational support and bootcamp. So we too participated in both programs. Next slide. Just a quick introduction. We2 is a social enterprise improving the lives of rural communities, mostly in Western Kenya, through innovative solar-powered solutions. So they focus on 4 key business verticals. It's water, mobility, energy, and cooling systems. And we've invited We2, specifically the WeWater vertical, so the WeWater vertical that provides clean and safe drinking water through 24/7 water ATMs and household connections. Joel is monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning lead, and Brian is program managers. So welcome, Joel and Brian. Thanks for being here. Next slide, please, Loes. I'd like to start with a first question to you, Joel. Could you say something on how the ILF for WASH Bootcamp built on the Foundational Support Program. We really like to hear how you as an enterprise perceive this. So it would be great if you can share this with us.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie, for the invitation. Yeah, true. We went through a very intensive program that was ILF program, and we were trained a lot on impact measurement and management. And from the ILF program, from the foundational support program, then we went through the bootcamp program, and the bootcamp was building from the foundational support program because the bootcamp was more of an advanced program, and it was building on some of the frameworks that we had developed from the ILF foundational support program. And from the foundational support program, we developed a lot of frameworks, a lot of tools that now forms part of our impact system. So some of the documents that we managed to develop, we didn't have a very good impact statement by then, but after going through the program, we managed to develop a very good impact statement. And also we managed to develop a very nice theory of change for our water project. And now after developing all the theory of change, we went now to develop the indicators. We had a technical support enterprise that was supporting us. And now they help us now to develop the indicators. Now, after developing the indicators, we went now down to develop the data collection tools. So from the data collection tools is now where in the bootcamp, we manage now to actualize on how now do you use the tools you have developed to come up with a very robust IMM system or an impact system where you are able even to visualize your data, to see your data, and to communicate your data. And some of the things that we also learned in the bootcamp was now the advanced impact topics like impact additionality. So the additionality from the new strategies you have deployed in your businesses, what is the impact additionality that you are getting with the business? So it was a very good support program for us, because from then we now can say we have a very good impact measurement system where we can verify our data, and we are able to communicate, not only just to communicate our data, but also to make decision with our data.
Thanks so much, Joel. Really insightful, and thanks for also elaborating a bit more. Actually, you already answered my second question in the sense that how well is IMM relevant for businesses like we do? You mentioned like it's really about developing tools and frameworks, but not only developing that in theory, but also operationalizing them. So I take the liberty to at least answer this question as that it is at least relevant for, of course, various purposes, depending on which type of enterprise you are. So either whether it's for fundraising, but also to gain insights in your operations, right? That is at least what I also hear from you, Joel. I'm looking at time, and therefore I'd like to focus, to skip the third question, but really go to the fourth question, which is very relevant for the topic of today. And that is, I'd like to ask you, Brian, what is, according to you, what do funders and TA providers need to do to match TA offering with the actual needs of entrepreneurs? So to really avoid things like TA fatigue or unnecessary support, really provide targeted hands-on support that maximizes the purpose that it's designed for. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, and hello, everyone. So looking at that question, we did realize that what you really need as enterprises is a TA that has individuals that listen, and those people who can then adapt to the growth stage of the different enterprises. And I think members here mentioned that there needs to be a lot of co-creation between the TA providers and the enterprises that are to receive it. Otherwise, if each one of them works in isolation, then it becomes difficult to create something that would actually help the enterprises in the long run. The other thing is, of course, ensuring that there's a lot of flexibility from the TA providers, and they should also be able to do a little bit of iteration in the TA design, so that then it becomes easy for the recipients of the TA then to relate to the different topics that will be shared, by the providers themselves. And perhaps one more thing that I thought would be really important is fostering a long-term relationship, especially among the peers who have taken part in the TA sessions. This will just ensure that there is a lot of learning or exchange of notes from each other in the long run post the TA training going forward. I think those would be my submissions specifically for those areas. And back to you again, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. And it's nice to see that it has some of the inputs that you gave has some overlap with what people also submitted in the word clouds. So basically co-creation, flexibility, but also indeed iteration of programs, the flexibility to stay on longer if needed. And also here you say like the peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, basically, right? To be like very important from an enterprise's point of perspective. We also want to save some time for Q&A, so let us go to the next slide. Just some final next steps from our end before we go to the Q&A. First, it's good to mention that we are in the process of creating pools of experts for which we plan to have framework agreements with different TA providers based on thematic expertise and geographic presence. This doesn't mean we won't work with experts and consultancies beyond those pools, but we will first consult them when we have specific assignments. Some of you I know who are in the room today are already on our list to receive an information form that we've developed. But just a general question, if we haven't yet spoken to you and you are a TA provider and interested to fill out your data through this form so that your details end up in our database, please send an email to programs@aquaforall.org. I think Luz has indeed already put it in the chat. So this is an invitation if you would like to fill out this form. And then final slide for this part is that overall, I'd like to conclude that our strategy and approach to standardize TA and really to leverage outputs where possible. So we do this by by recycling relevant aspects from individual TA projects and convert them into toolkits, but for example, also webinars or trainings to make sure that a broader audience can benefit from it. Next part, the Q&A session. So over to you, Luz, for the final 10 minutes.
Yeah,
of the session.
Some of you have already posted questions in the chat. If you have, if anybody has any questions, also maybe some questions for our guest speakers, if you want to know a little bit more about the work, how Risotf Impact is on the TA, or specifically on the impact investment cases that Oasis has been talking about, or specifically for you to put them in the chat as well. There is already a question for Oasis, actually, which is on the case of OICO credits. And somebody was wondering what were some results that created interest and buy-in from the private sector and banks in WASH? Could you elaborate a little bit on that story?
Thanks, Luz, and thanks, Saqib, for the question. I hope I interpreted the question correctly, but so when a bank is interested in creating a new product in water and sanitation without sufficient knowledge, I think that's when technical assistance can be really additional for them to understand what exists in the market. Oftentimes we've done technical assistance which allows for market studies for these banks, for them to understand who are the investable projects in there, what are their financing needs, what kind of risks are associated with these kind of projects. And we found that this brings in a lot of interest within the banks on who they can finance and what is the potential for the market out there, and gives them a better understanding as well. Yeah, I think that was a key growth factor that we saw. I hope that was answering the question, but if not, please feel free to unmute and clarify.
Yeah, thank you always. So indeed, if it has, oh, I see a thanks. So I guess it was clear. If there's anything, please feel free to post it in the chat or reach out later. Oh, well, you even answered this perfectly. Oh, well, so that's great. There is another question in the chat, which is, what are the biggest challenges faced in implementing sustainable WASH programs in different settings? Henri, can you maybe share some reflections on that? But I think it would also be very nice to hear from you too, maybe as a WASH implementer later.
Yeah, indeed, it's quite diverse. Of course, it really focuses a bit on. Well, it's about the challenge of TA is, like also Brian mentioned, is how to make sure that it's co-created, right? So that is on TA, but I see here biggest challenge faced implementing sustainable WASH programs in different settings. It's a very broad question, actually. But yeah, of course, it's related to enabling environments, like certain policy levels, but also the ability to invest, especially from international investors. What we also see is that, for example, through our applications for grants, is that, and particularly for impact-linked finance grants, is that high grant reliance, it hampers, in a sense, sustainable, in the sense of financially sustainable WASH, because you will always be dependent on new rounds of funding. But of course, it's very broad. Maybe Nathaniel, if you have some specific question on this, that would be great, because we can talk about indeed the funding element or the enabling environment elements. I don't know if Brian or Joelle, if you'd like to share something from your experience, if any. I don't want to put you on the spot, but just if there's anything specific that you'd like to share as a particular challenge to, in your case, develop, to work out your business model of 24/7 ATMs, but also the household connections that you are now piloting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melis. And as you said, the question is quite broad, but I'll just share our own personal experience with household water connection, where one of our main challenges has been the shifting policies within the ecosystem, especially back in Kenya. And because water is also quite devolved, you find that each county has a way of how they operate. And so if you want to really sustain your operations, you always have to be on your toes to just know exactly what is happening in the sector within the county and also at the national level, for you then to align to then benefit from enabling environment. Otherwise, if that is not factored in, chances are you might miss out on one or two regulations that have been passed in the county parliaments, which then in essence will have a ripple effect on you, and also how then you are able then to do your water provision at the county level and maybe the communities yourself. So these shifting policies and regulations at multiple levels of the government are also quite a challenge when it comes to sustaining our services. But all said and done, I think we've learned our lessons as we do, and we always on top of our game to ensure that we're able then to know what the government is doing, so that then we can align accordingly with the shifting changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. It's indeed really from what is within the control of enterprises to like properly respond to those policies and changes, right? And I think it's when it's about policy influencing, which is also in some ways a kind of TA, but it's really more from government to government policy level TA, for example, where World Bank comes in, what we also showed earlier in the how broad TA can be actually. Luz, back to you.
Thanks. Yeah, there are some questions coming into the chat, some very specific ones. But let's see to what extent we can respond to these. This is one question from Ruth is, where is the consumer protection and quality control in TA? And also who's going to pay it? I'm not sure if you then mean specifically water quality control or quality of TA. So please maybe elaborate a little bit on that. If it was more on the water quality, I think one of the pillars that we do have in our that we see really as the themes within TA is also very specific on the quality of the services to water and sanitation. And we see that as one of the themes within TA to ensure that is happening. So that's one of the topics that we also focus on when providing TA. Who's going to pay for it is always going to be a big question, right? I mean, enterprises have different sources of funding coming in, whether it's through maybe some even through taxes if you're a utility linked to the government, or the tariffs, etc. We see a lot of still grant dependency and donations, of course, in the sector. But from the perspective of Akkoord for All, we see that businesses need to have a financially sustainable model, and in also ensuring quality is then going to be something that needs to be paid through the revenues that they are receiving. But please elaborate further in the chat if we have not touched upon the topic that you would like to know. And then there is another question from Annabelle. She's mentioning it would be nice to know what happens when you find different tools are in use. For example, in case of different financial models. Anne-Marie, do you feel like you have sufficient information to answer this question, or would you like Annabelle to elaborate?
Well, in general, I think tools are just tools, right? And you can choose whatever suits best. But what would be good is to, for example, and just reflect on our role, is that that we at least explain which versions are in place, and for which specific context they are most suitable. So the same applies to IMM. There are so many different types of approaches to IMM, from more traditional M&E, working with logical frameworks, to more IM like lean and mean IMM frameworks that impact funds prefer to use, still with a robust data management, but just different ways of how to get to those data. And I think the same applies to financial models. I don't know, I think there is quite some TA providers in the room who might also have some insights on this, on how you tackle this when working with enterprise, for example. If you want to make sure they use the right type of financial model, how do you go about it? Is there anything? I'm looking at the whole room, but maybe I don't know if there's people from Lightcastle Partners in the room. I see Sakif. What is Sakif saying? Oh, I think that's a comment related to something else. Yeah, I'd like to invite maybe people from TA providers that also focus on investment readiness, if you have any insights on this. Oh, and I see it's already time.
Yeah, so if you have any insights on this, I suggest that you post them in the chat, and that's how we can continue the conversation. Unfortunately, we have the time. We have some final questions for you in a poll that should pop up on your screen right now. So we're wondering how you have experienced the webinar, whether it has met your expectations, or whether it has not. But also, as mentioned a little bit earlier, is that we are curious to learn if you would be interested in any future discussions in maybe some smaller groups in the topic of TA. So if you, you can choose to press yes, please reach out to me. Please know that your email address is indeed then visible for us to then reach out to you. And I think, unfortunately, this setting has not allowed us to have too much discussion and interaction, but we really hope to do that a little bit more in smaller groups, and not when this type of a webinar with 100 participants is going to be very difficult to have engaging conversations. But I think with that, we would like to thank you all for joining this session. And thank you very much for the insight that you have shared, either through the chat or through the Mentimeter. And if you are interested, if you are a TA provider interested in filling out our form so we can put you into our database, please reach out to programs@aquapol.org. But also, if you have any other questions and that we have not been able to answer, please feel free to reach out to the same email address. And lastly, I would like to thank all of the speakers. So thank you, Anne-Marie, always internally, but especially Melanie, Joelle, and Brian. Thank you so much for making time available and joining this webinar and sharing your experiences with everybody. I think it was very insightful. And with that, thank you again for joining the webinar, and have a good rest of your day.